Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. I'm Mary Beth Stibbins, and I'm with our event coordination team in Braver Angels, and I want to welcome you to this gathering. It's wonderful to have you all here. So before we begin, I want to take a moment to set the tone for the next 90 minutes. Tonight is about courageous citizenship in action. It is about the everyday human choices each of us makes in our communities and in our relationships. You will hear stories from volunteers across the country who have acted with courage in their own corner of the world. You'll hear from our CEO, Maury, who will help us reflect on why courageous citizenship matters now more than ever. You'll hear from Mark Metzger about our 2026 National Convention coming up. And then before we close, you're going to have a chance to reflect on what this mission means in your own life and share your thoughts. So as we begin, I want to invite you into a spirit of presence. Set aside the noise of the day and let yourself listen with curiosity. This is a space to breathe and reconnect with what calls you to this work. A space to notice the threads in each story and in your own life. And courageous citizenship is not about perfection. It's about showing up in ways that honor both the people we love and the people we may not understand or who we may disagree with. So now I am going to turn it over to Wilk Wilkinson, who is our Braver Angels Director of Media Operations and the host of the D-Rate the Hate podcast. Thank you, Wilk.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mary Beth. I am very excited to be here tonight and very excited to see all of you who have decided to take some of your Sunday night and come out and practice a little courageous citizenship of your own. This next chapter of Braver Angels is really incredible, something that I'm incredibly excited about. You know, over the years that I've been doing the D-Rate the Hate podcast and working with Braver Angels, first as a volunteer for several years, many of you might know that, but now I'm on staff. I've been blessed to have, uh, blessed to sit down with more courageous citizens than I can count. Honestly, when I was asked to choose one example of courageous citizenship, I thought, how in the world am I supposed to narrow that down with all the conversations that I've had? Because courage doesn't always look like just a battlefield moment. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's uncomfortable, sometimes it's just two people deciding to walk towards each other instead of walking away. I've seen it from so many angles. I've seen it in Mary Beth Bryant, a classical musician who stood up to toxic norms in her field because she refused to let the next generation be crushed by silent pressures. She challenged her own in group, and that takes a lot of guts. I've seen it in Dr. Fred Luskin, who teaches forgiveness in a culture that practically is just practically so addicted to outrage. Fred reminds us that healing our civic life begins with healing our personal lives. And I've seen it in my friends and collaborators, Dr. Francis Collins and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who, as a result of our friendship, opened a dialogue during one of the most tense periods of public discourse in our lifetime. They showed us that truth seeking and human dignity can coexist even through disagreement. But tonight I want to tell you about two men, two true braver angels, whose conversation on D-Rate the Hate captures the heart of courageous citizenship as good as anything I've seen lately. Their names are Ibrahim Anli and Will Harwood. Two Americans, one by birth, one by choice, coming together across cultural, religious, and political differences, excuse me, to explore what binds us as citizens of this great American experiment. Ibrahim grew up in Turkey. He worked in interfaith leadership in a country where religious minorities were often viewed with suspicion. His efforts towards pluralism and freedom eventually put him and his family at risk. He was persecuted, displaced, and ultimately forced to make a choice. Either step back and shrink back from the world or step into a new one. Ibrahim chose America. But what struck me most wasn't just the hardship, it was how he described America. He called it a living contract, a civic creed that goes far beyond legal paperwork. He said, this country's strength is in its ability to face its shortcomings. And he said it with a sense of gratitude that is humbling for those of us who were lucky enough to be born into these blessings. When Ibrahim talks about America, you hear someone who truly chose this country, not because it's perfect, but because it's uniquely capable of self-correction and moral growth. To him, America's promise isn't a myth, it's a lived reality. And then there's my friend Will, a natural born American who grew up with deep respect for the American story. But his family story includes hardship as well. His Italian ancestors arrived in Ohio to KKK rallies, not targeting African Americans only, but also Italians. And yet his family leaned into the American promise, working hard, assimilating, and building a future. Will believes, as he said on the show, that no American generation gets to choose the challenges it faces, but every generation is responsible for rising to them. Now think about this. These two men didn't have to talk. They didn't have to share their stories. They didn't have to risk misunderstanding or discomfort, but they did. They sat down on my podcast and in private conversations, many private conversations before that, to explore religious pluralism, cultural pluralism, and what citizenship really means. And this question of what binds us together. Friends, that is courageous citizenship. Not shouting, not retreating, and not labeling one another, but choosing curiosity over fear, choosing engagement over withdrawal, and choosing to see an immigrant as a not as a threat, and seeing a native born American not as an oppressor, but as a partner in a shared civic project. In their conversation, Ibrahim talked about the First Amendment with more passion than many Americans who were raised under its protection. He said, don't let even the smallest dent form in it. He knows firsthand what happens to a society when the freedom to speak and the freedom to worship and question disappears. Will echoed something I think every American needs to hear. We need to rebuild our confidence in what we already have. Confidence in our founding ideals, confidence in the Constitution, and confidence that we can rise to the challenges of the polarization just like generations before us rose to the challenges that they never asked for. What Ibrahim and Will modeled is exactly what Braver Angels was built for. We bring people together across differences. We face our shortcomings honestly, and we ground ourselves in our shared civic values. And we choose to become we, not us versus them. These two didn't agree on everything, nor should they, but they showed up and showed what it looks like to honor both pluralism and the anchor that keeps pluralism from drifting into chaos. They talked about America not as a melting pot of sameness, but as a kaleidoscope, many colors, refracted through a shared lens. And here's what I took away from that. Courageous citizenship isn't a title we earn, it's a choice that we make daily. It's choosing to stay in the conversation, choosing to be anchored in our founding principles, and choosing gratitude for the treasure that we all sit on. A treasure that many immigrants understand more clearly than many others do. And here's what you can take forward. Talk to people who aren't like you. Look for the story that's beneath the surface. Choose curiosity when it would be easier to fall back into fear. And recommit to the living contract of our civic creed. Friends, courageous citizenship isn't out there somewhere. It's in here. It's in each of us. and it looks a lot like what Ibrahim and Will showed the world. Two Americans, one by birth, one by choice, choosing each other, choosing dialogue, and choosing America. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for showing up tonight. Let's keep building together.
Thank you so much, Wilk. I knew when we were doing this event tonight that I'd have Wilk join us right at the beginning and just set the stage on that. I love the tone, the feeling, the essence of what you shared with us, and it really stands out, the things that you're seeing and experiencing, the stories that you're sharing. So thank you so much for that, and thank you for sharing that. Now, thank you all for coming tonight. I'll have to say, as I'm seeing myself, I look like Mr. Rogers with my sweater here. I hadn't thought about that till I just now saw it. But I wanted to be festive. It's holiday time, and I've got my red sweater on. So it is a little bit of in the neighborhood. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for wanting to be a part of this tonight. And for those of you who watch this later, in fact, for each of us that are here, I would ask you to encourage others of family, friends, members in the organization to watch the replay of this later so they can too jump in and get ideas as to what this really means and what we're talking about. Now, as I was preparing for this, I was reflecting upon why do we want to do this and why are we having this conversation tonight and what's the intention? And when is our country needed and expressed in these types of things in the past? Now, our intention tonight is to be able, as Mary Beth started with this, is to be able to help engage with the group and go a little bit deeper on this idea that you've been hearing about, that was created through a bunch of exercises that many of you participated in. And it was really the effort to try to distill everything we've been doing for the last 9 years, learning what we've learned from, and then reflecting upon in what ways is 2025 different than 2016, so that as we go into 2026, we're prepared for our next chapter as an organization together. Now, you're going to also hear some excitement about a little announcement that we've been so anxious to share with you, that's going to be shared with you in just a little bit later here tonight, about 2026 and the way we're going to make this come to life in a way that I think you'll all be very excited about. I wanted to start by saying, when I went back on history and looked at something looked at a number of these things about when our leaders have called on us to own our part of the process. One of the things I came across was 92 years ago, in March of 1933, there was a certain president who decided that he wanted to be able to convey to us the idea of his ability to what he wanted to ask us to do. And that was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He started with these fireside chats. And I'm going to play this, and I'm hoping that the sound will go through. If not, I will read the portion for it. So we'll check the sound here. But listen what he says at the end of his very first fireside chat.
These are the essentials of success in carrying out our plan. You people must have faith. You must not be stampeded by rumors or guesses. Let us unite in banishing fear. We have provided the machinery to restore our financial system, and it is up to you to support and make it work. It is your problem, my friends, your problem no less than it is mine. Together, we cannot fail.
Now, I hope you were able to hear that. But at the end, I want to emphasize that powerful language. It is your problem, my friends. Your problem no less than it is mine. Let us unite in banishing fear. We've provided the machinery to restore the system. Now, what was going on back then? Something pretty significant and pretty scary in terms of the reality of the banking crisis that was happening across this country. And he was reminding the people of this country, of this great American experiment, that we all are part of the solution, and we have to own that. And 92 years later, I believe more than I have ever believed anything in my life that we have got to reawaken in ourselves the notion of what we own in this process of this great American experiment. And so I want to take you through a couple of things that explain what we mean by courageous citizenship. And I want you to be thinking about this to see yourself in this. and reflect upon what it means in terms of the things that you can do on a regular basis and being a part of Braver Angels. And if you're new to us, I hope this inspires you to want to get involved and want to take this and carry it forward, because this is, in essence, what we've been doing the entire time over the last 9 years. And now what we're doing is trying to take it to the next chapter to meet the moment. Now, I know you've seen this. I'm going to reference this. Our vision of a refreshed vision for Braver Angels is that we envision an America where courageous citizenship is the honored norm. Now, think about that phrase, that what you just heard Wilk talking about it. We're envisioning an America where that behavior is the honored norm. It's certainly not today. We're rewarded and incentivized more to punch someone in the face than to have a conversation. And so that when we have that, we envision this renewing civic culture and building trust across political differences. That's what we're really envisioning. That then helps us understand that, well, then what we're trying to do is to put social currency or a badge of honor around behaving this way that starts with us individually. And so that's helped us to refresh our mission statement of that our role in all of this as an organization is to inspire and equip Americans to practice courageous citizenship across political differences through skill building, convening, and collaborative action. That's you. That's the stories you're going to hear about today. And it covers the array of what we do. So, what do we mean by this phrase, courageous citizenship? There's a lot of things that we will be doing to figure out how to message and talk about this, but this provides us a North Star of trying to put something that anyone and everyone working in this area of bridge building and depolarization could say what we're working toward. Now, when we say courageous citizenship, at its most basic level, we mean actively engaging in human connection across political difference to build together. Now, that could be building relationships, that could be building solutions in your local community, that could be building to solve problems together. But it's building together, and it's intentional, and it's connection, and it's across difference. Now, as we look at this in practice, we know that courageous citizenship, it's the choice to step out. You just heard Wilk so beautifully explain this with real stories. It's taking that choice to step out of the outrage cycle. Let's face it, today, that is the dominant narrative. The conflict entrepreneurs of the world make money as we are the product that they sell. By getting our eyeballs and attention in the most easy way to do it, of scaring us, making us think that there are these evil people trying to destroy our way of living, and therefore making it almost impossible for us to engage. But if we choose to step out of their outrage cycle, we actively connect with people across difference, and we work locally to find constructive ways to heal division and build together. That's what courageous citizenship is in practice. Now, how do we do that? You know that you saw in our mission, and you know this because you're participating in this. We have so many different great content and programs that start with skill building, like our workshops, our e-courses, our volunteer training, our depolarization dojo. If you haven't been playing with that, jump in. It's a lot of fun, and it's interesting using technology to help you practice these skills. We do that through convening. We have gatherings, we have debates, we have town halls, forums on campus and other places. We have groups that gather for dialogue. We have events that we do. And then collaborative action. That's common ground workshops, citizen-led solutions, our national initiatives, like what we're doing on the Citizens Commission on Immigration, what we have done on trustworthy elections. All of that is putting courageous citizenship into practice. But how does it specifically relate to courageous citizenship? At the skill building level, dialogue is the engine, so skill building is the maintenance. This is where we learn the courage to look inward for the dignity to connect without contaminating the conversation with contempt. That's not easy. It's easy to see it in others. It's more difficult to actually see it in ourselves and then put it into practice to make change. At convening, this is the heart of dialogue. You can't have dialogue if you don't convene and gather. So every gathering, every debate, every town hall and forum is an act of courageous connection. We convene to prove to people that we can stay in respectful relationship that's necessary for constructive action. So relationships are at the core of courageous citizenship. And then action, that's the load-bearing wall that we're putting a little more structure to, because we've heard so much from you of dialogue for dialogue's sake is not enough right now. We got to go more. And so many of you may choose to go that further step of this is why we do the hard work. Collaborative action is the proof that courageous citizenship works. We use the connection and the trust we forge to build together locally and strengthen our self-governing country. The great American experiment is self-governance. Now, all of those things operate across this journey of this impact that we know is the theory of change, that first I choose to act instead of react. I then choose to act together locally, and then I embrace and recognize that there's something bigger than me in this great country that I choose to act for the health of American society. Those dimensions, that then shows us dimensions of courageous citizenship. There's an internal side of this that's very big and important. It's reclaiming my own agency and choosing to be courageous. This is not about being kind. I've heard people criticize us by saying, you just want to be kumbaya. You should just be kind because as a human being, you're going to have a happier life and better relationships. We're asking you to do something deeper than this, to actually be brave and lean into finding someone that's different and being able to have that courage to do that. The community is that interpersonal, it's the connection through dignity and curiosity that's required to be able to connect. And then at the national level is when civic engagement becomes obvious. In fact, we believe that when people do this, you don't have to talk about civics, they are living it, and then they'll want to learn more about it because that's collaborative action and renewal. All of that together, when you think about internal dimensions of necessary, that's the necessary personal preparation that we empower citizens with the courage to look inward, set aside assumptions, reject cynicism, and this is where we foster the personal agency and our democratic responsibility. It's the part Wilk just invited us to own. FDR invited the people to own at that time. The interpersonal is the method for this constructive engagement. Actively step across the political divide to engage. This action is grounded in dignity and shared humanity of the worth of the individual next to you, no matter what they believe, and guided by respectful listening and curiosity. And then finally, the civic dimension, that collaborative action and renewal, we move beyond talk only to be able to work side by side locally on shared interests and values. This is essential for experiencing collaborative action that transforms division into unity of purpose, not unanimity, not uniformity, but unity of purpose. And that is what we mean by courageous citizenship. Now, we want to move forward and hear some more about these stories of making this come to life. And then we're going to give you some language that we're finding helpful when someone asks us, well, what do you do at Braver Angels and why does that matter? I want to start by introducing a good friend of mine, someone I met through this work, MTV or Mary TV or Mary Thomas Valens. Mary, it's so good to see you again. I met you when we did a workshop up in Utah with elected officials, a fascinating experience. We connected and you really changed my life in ways that I can only explain by the fact that I'm here tonight. Because in January or February of this year, I would not have guessed this is what I'd be doing. But you called me and you said, you should apply for this job. And you invited me to be courageous in moving forward. Now, if you don't know Mary, she's the Braver Angels Moderator Forum team leader and leader of the Braver School Community Network, also known as Braver Education. And she also does a lot of work with the Braver teens. Mary, share with us your experience on this.
Thank you for having me there, and I'm glad you said yes. Okay, so my hometown, Irvine, California, has been an innovative city for all of its 54 years. And it's a suburban place with great schools and universities. We have beautiful parks, curbside recycling, it's high tech, and a medical research center. And most importantly, for today's conversation, people of many faiths and cultures. In fact, as a teacher for 41 years, my classes seemed like a mini United Nations. lots of acceptance of diversity. We had lots of multicultural activities, and we have churches of many types, synagogues, mosques, and temples, all without any noticeable conflict. And then 2023, our city became really embroiled in anger and major distrust. The city council meetings struggled with heated conversations and yelling meetings with protesters from outside and with our city, and it all was related to the Israeli-Hamas conflict. During public comments on the issues, advocates for both sides demanded that City Council take a position, either support Israel in its effort to destroy Hamas or demand an immediate ceasefire in support of the Palestinians. The issue dominated City Council meetings, often pushing them late into the early morning hours. Many people attending the meetings made it so difficult for civility to occur. There was lots of inflammatory language. There was yelling. Some non-Irvine protesters had blood-stained pillowcases to represent dead babies. A political presence was needed, which was completely unusual for our town. Local citizens were torn about what's happening. Some supported the protesters, while others were fearful because of the angry messages. This recurring debate continued for a few months, and it made it difficult for the council to do anything else on its agenda. City business that needed to be discussed was not happening. Local concerns that could only be addressed by our city were being pushed aside. And I want to make it clear before I go on. The attack on Israel and the loss of innocent civilians in Gaza are horrific. Anti-Semitism and hate toward Muslims caught in this conflict really concerned me. But what I became aware of is something was happening in my own city, and our meetings were taking such an ugly turn. This was not the tolerant, open community that I had known and loved for decades. So I needed to go to City Council and find out what was happening for myself. I walked along the line of protesters as they waited to get in, and I asked them for their stories and what they wanted to accomplish. Over time, my friend and I, Wendy Bacoto and I, realized that the Mideast issues really couldn't be solved here in City Council, and that they should be taken to Congress where international issues can be addressed. We realized for our city, we needed to change the conversation. We needed to get back to city business, and we needed to encourage people to take their international concerns to their Congress people because those concerns are important. So Wendy and I wrote to City Council members. When writing the letters, I actually used the Braver Angels lab skills. After listening to the meetings, my letter acknowledged the various sides of the conflict. I agreed where agreement could be found. Then I pivoted away from the international conflict and shared my perspective on how city business seemed to be taken over by the protests. These skills proved to be valuable in all the conversations I had with city officials and with the protesters outside. This worked because I heard back from City Council members quite quickly. As a result, I met with one who supported voting for the ceasefire resolution and one who wanted to get back to city business. Hearing their different perspectives was both informative and essential to understanding what was at stake. However, the angry meetings continued. So Wendy and I started a letter writing campaign asking Irvine residents to write to City Council and ask them to focus on city business. We asked them not to take a position on the ceasefire resolution at the city level and to leave that issue for the congressional leaders that have the power to influence change in the Mideast. And again, I used the lab skills in my writing. We emailed residents, and they in turn wrote to City Council members. The result? The City Council decided not to take a position on the Israeli-Hamas conflict, and once they did, the protesters stopped. It was like an overnight change, and City Council meetings returned to addressing city problems. Now, the problems and the feelings are not completely solved, but we're working on healing them. Courageous citizenship doesn't need to be complicated. It means acting instead of reacting. Rather than reading the angry face posts about the meetings, Wendy and I attended them. Rather than jumping to one side or the another, we gathered firsthand information, listened to people on both sides and various perspectives, and we asked a lot of questions of curiosity. Above all, we did our best to treat everyone with respect and compassion. We realized there were protesters there with relatives in the Mideast from both sides who were deeply affected by what was happening there. And we wanted to hear their stories and to understand the pain underneath their anger. But anyway, the work continues, but the angry protests have stopped. So, Maury, that's my story.
Thank you so much, Mary. And as you heard that story, the personal part, seeing something that was going on and choosing to act, the interpersonal, finding another person engaging on this, even those that were engaging in a different way, and then the civic of taking action, not having to wait for elected officials in the process to be able to do that. Mary, thank you so much for sharing that story. And even more than that, thank you for living this in your life on a regular basis. Now, I want to jump all the way across the continent over to South Carolina. One of my new recently discovered favorite places, by the way, where my wife and I just absolutely love that Charleston, Hilton Head area. I want to introduce Chris Knox. Chris is our South Carolina Low Country Braver Angels ambassador. And Chris, tell us the story of courageous citizenship that you've brought to the table tonight.
I am so excited to share this story. Thank you, Maury, for the opportunity. I'm going to talk about three major components of courageous citizenship: acting together locally, empowering people to build across division, and collaborative action within the community. Last spring, 2024, Episcopal Diocese of South Carolina, they reached out to myself and to my partner, Dave Coffin, who you're actually going to hear from next, seek support helping their congregations navigate this political climate. And they were specifically confronting political polarization within their congregations, and they needed new skills and fresh perspectives. So rather than avoiding the challenge, they chose to engage and seek a path toward understanding and connection, and quite frankly, healing within their faith communities. Dave is a trained moderator. I'm the South Carolina Low Country ambassador. And so we used our skills and training to help the diocese roadmap a plan. Working alongside Reverend Parnell McCall, our Brave Angels team brought the first Depolarizing Ourselves workshop to Charleston, South Carolina. It's the first Braver Angels engagement in the entire city, and we're super proud about that. This workshop is built to engage faith communities, and it was the first ever that we were able to support. And over this 90-minute workshop, it became much more than a presentation. It became a space where people were heard, they listened deeply, they reflected honestly, and they rediscovered the shared values that hold their faith communities and our country together. That impact in Charleston spread like wildfire within the diocese to communities in Myrtle Beach and Hilton Head. And each congregation hosted Depolarizing Ourselves workshop for their participants. And those folks left encouraged, hopeful, and better equipped to build bridges where there had been barriers previously. And in fact, the Hilton Head congregation, a blue-leaning congregation on the whole, began planning outreach and connection with their red-leaning neighbors. And their intention was to open their minds and their church for challenging conversations, to courageously build bridges. The enthusiasm was so strong that the diocese invited us to share this workshop and our experience at their quarterly conference in Hilton Head, where once again, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Diocese leaders listened, they heard, and they took that mission to their congregations across the state. And the opportunity that this represents is what's possible when we courageously serve the needs of our local community with our gifts and talents. And I think this is the key, Maury, if I can say this in a succinct way, in our quest for courageous citizenship, is we discover what our community needs. We discover how our individual talents can help, and we engage courageously where those two opportunities meet. Let me say that again. We discover what our community needs. We're in our community. Courage, reach out, find out what the need is. We know what we're good at, what we're capable of. Dave, myself, in our representative situations. And then we engage courageously where those two opportunities meet up. We're deeply proud to have walked beside the diocese in this journey, and we're grateful to witness how mutual understanding can strengthen in communities of faith across political divides. So thank you, Maury.
Chris, I love that. I love that notion of you know your community. Why is it so important that we understand and take the position that it's up to you to discover that and to act, as opposed to national organization coming in and saying, go do this, go do that? What's the role locally versus national, and why is that important?
First thing that comes to my mind is it has to be personal. It has to be personal. There are needs that are literally 2 streets over from me in a faith congregation, right? I know that. And I have skills and talents from professional life and from my passions with Braver Angels. Dave, from his professional life and his passions with Braver Angels, that we can say, hey, where's that Venn diagram overlap? Because what I'm doing is affecting my neighbor, right? And vice
Mhm.
versa. That's why I think that's the difference.
Thank you. It's the beautiful thing that Alexis de Tocqueville wrote about when he came to America and said why it was so different to him compared to Europe. And he saw that it was the people and the idea that when something happened in the road or in the streets of their community, the people came together and solved it. And yet they were so different in their beliefs and views, they worked together. So Chris, thank you so much. Now, like you said, we're going to stay in South Carolina here, kind of close to where some other things we want to talk about later tonight about what we're going to do next year. But I'm going to ask Dave Kaufman to come and join us. And Dave is a moderator and a one-on-one conversation coordinator, which if you've never done the one-on-one conversations, I'm sure Dave would agree with me. They're fascinating. I just did one recently with a 19-year-old kid in college, a generational divide. Go to the website, select that one-on-one conversation, and you can pick someone or some background place that you want to have that conversation. So Dave helps with that. He also assisted in the development of the new one-on-one conversations that were happening right now about immigration. So if you want to do that on that very topic with someone who has a different view than you, go online to the website and do that. But Dave, what is courageous citizenship from your story that you can share?
Thank you for having me. I think the biggest thing for me is encouraging people and assisting them into getting out of their comfort zones and trying to discover different perspectives politically. Why are they there? How did you come to believe this? And to realize that you have, with people that have different political persuasions, you have a lot in common. Now, Danny Morales of the Soda City Alliance here in South Carolina coordinated a depolarizing ourselves session that brought together members from 3 different political parties in Columbia, South Carolina. And this was, if you haven't been to this session, it's focused on understanding personal political biases and exploring how those biases shape our perspective and discourse. The session drew about 25 participants, representing a very diverse cross-section of political beliefs and backgrounds. As again, we were trying to create a setting where these participants could examine not only how they view others across the political spectrum, but also how their internal beliefs and assumptions contribute to that polarization. Now, through the exercises, and if you haven't been through this before, we have a number of breakout sessions where we ask people to talk about a specific issue and come back and report how they felt about these particular points of view. And it was a confirmation of bias and effective polarization. And then they learned strategy for recognizing when these biases might cloud their judgment, okay, or their interactions with others. In other words, don't just label somebody and look at it that way. Engage with a person. What stood out most during this session was the level of very earnest engagement. I was really impressed. The participants approached each activity with openness and curiosity, and demonstrating a shared commitment to understanding one another rather than debating or persuading. We emphasize you're not here to change anybody's mind. You're here to learn about one another. This was evident. This was an evident willingness to listen for the understanding rather than rebuttal. I can't say that enough. Many participants expressed appreciation for the opportunity to encounter differing perspectives in a constructive, respectful environment. Now, by the end of the class, I had several individuals say that they felt better equipped to approach political conversations with empathy and patience. The realization that one's political identity does not have to define every interaction appeared to resonate very strongly throughout the group. The atmosphere evolved from cautious and reserved at the onset to thoughtful and collaborative by the conclusion. Now, overall, the session achieved its central aim, helping participants see disagreement, not as a barrier, but as an opportunity for learning and connection. The experience reaffirmed what we've given the tools of space and self-reflect, individuals across political lines can move forward towards mutual understanding. I left the session grateful for the participants' sincerity and encouraged by their desire to continue building schools, develop civil dialogue. Thank you, Maury.
Thank you, Dave. Now, what I love about these stories, and these things are happening all over the country. You all know this because you all are doing this, the people that are with us. And if you're new to us, this is inspiring because it's individuals making those choices. Now, these stories that we heard from Dave and that we heard from Chris in South Carolina, they were practicing skills through convening, right? Now, Dave, my question for you is courageous citizenship, they're choosing to be a part of that, right? Of coming and being joining into that workshop in and of itself. Do you view that behavior, or tell me why you view the behavior of choosing to join into that sort of a workshop and actually practice those skills as courageous citizenship?
To me, it is individuals' willingness and curiosity to realize that they may not understand people, but if you can engage them in a civil manner, that you can learn from them. In other words, the people are willing to step out of their comfort zone, their silo, and engage with people that the media loves to label as believing this way or that way. And the really surprising thing, I think, for most of the participants, outside of having the tools, was to learn just how much they have in common for concerns about our country, how much they have in common.
Yeah, I love that. And I love it in our alliance chairs and leaders across the country, as we've been starting to talk about courageous citizenship, there's some that have wondered, well, does that mean I've got to go do a common ground workshop or a citizen-led solution? I think what we've just heard in these stories is that, yeah, if you want to do that, you could choose to go and take it to a common ground workshop and a citizen-led solution. But choosing to do what Chris and Dave have just shared here, where there was a need, and then bringing skills in there and inviting people to participate in the way that Dave and Chris just shared, that's courageous citizenship. That's taking that choice to engage. And what's really important for our alliances and our members who join alliances is, to Chris's point, choose what you need to do locally and engage that way. And do it through that lens of courageous citizenship, but what the needs are locally of your people and of you in your lives. We have a toolkit to get there. So thank you, Dave, for sharing that story, and thank you for the work that you're doing in South Carolina.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Now, I want to go to one final story. We're going to jump back across the continent to the other side, but I promise you, we're going to eventually get back to the other side of the country by the time we end tonight. Now, I want to introduce Ken Futernick. And Ken has been a long-time Braver Angels volunteer and is the host of the podcast, Courageous Conversations, about our schools. Love the name of that podcast, Ken. Tell us, from your perspective, your story on this and what it means.
Thank you, Maury. I love the opportunity to do this. And I recently recorded interviews with a bunch of people that are part of this story. And at the end of the story I'm about to tell, I'll share the website where people can listen to the voices of the people who I'm going to talk about. I'm going to share a story that I think you'll find not only inspiring, but I think also instructive. I've been involved with and committed to Braver Angels mission for several years, but I learned some new things from this story I'm about to share, and I hope you will too. The story is about Reading, Pennsylvania, and it begins around 2021 during the pandemic, when a colleague of mine named Rich Harwood from the Harwood Institute began working with civic, faith, and education leaders to improve the quality of life, quality of education for its residents in Reading, Pennsylvania. Well, at the time, Reading was considered the poorest city in America. Stores were closing, people that were living on the streets, student absenteeism was high, and schools were struggling. What Harwood found when he and his team went to Reading and began speaking with people is that unlike many other places around the country, there were no culture wars. There were no toxic divides. What he told me was, he said, I got this incredible sense of spirit that we can do better and we can be better. We want to make a go of it. We just don't know how. We've tried so many things that haven't worked, and we've lost the sense of possibility and hope. And we're just looking for a way forward. We just can't quite imagine it yet. Well, the problem was that all of the civic, faith, and school leaders had simply hunkered down and retreated into their silos. The problem was they weren't talking with each other anymore. So what Harwood did was to have them all come together, and he asked, what can we working together do to make Reading work better for all of its residents? They focused on 3 initiatives, and I'm going to tell you about one of them, which was designed to help adult limited English speakers learn to speak English. It was important because language barriers made life especially hard for these residents, and to engage in civic matters, to get health care for their families, and to communicate with educators about their children's education. Steve Osman, pastor of the Calvary United Church of Christ, who's known as Pastor Steve, said, why don't I start dinners in my church? It's the Latino community. Food is an important part of the culture. Let's start a dinner where people who are learning English can practice English. But not only that, people who learn or speak English can practice with them so they can learn Spanish. So amazingly, about 50 to 75 people regularly showed up at Pastor Steve's church for these dinners. And other leaders, church leaders in Reading said, well, we want to host these dinners too. And so they did. And lots of people ended up showing up at their churches as well for this dinner and conversation. Well, this is just one of several things leaders in Reading did as they began working together. They started small, these initiatives spread, and they amplified these stories throughout the community. And as they amplified the stories, hope emerged, and more people wanted to be part of it. These small success stories are not just about people having civil conversations, but about people working together to solve problems they all cared about. Small progress eventually spread throughout the city and its schools and led to an extraordinary transformation. Well, here, just as I bring this to close, I want to share what I think a few important lessons were from this story, not just for a big city like Reading, but for any organization, a church, a school system, any organization that might be looking to become better. Harwood, first one is Harwood urged leaders to start by listening, not by telling. And that's certainly a fundamental braver angel skill. But I think as Chris or David said just before me, who knows the city better than the leaders? But it turned out the leaders weren't turning outward and listening to people in the city. And some of what they thought people needed and wanted wasn't actually accurate. And so when Harwood asked them to join him and go out and listen to people in the city, they discovered some things they didn't know. Second lesson, I think, is that community and school leaders began doing what Harwood calls turning outward. They got out of their silos and created a new civic culture. And third, they went beyond listening and having good conversations. They got moving, as Harwood says, and together addressed real problems. And all of the things that I think braver angels values, like empathy and dignity, respect, emerge through collective action. And as we think of the idea of courageous citizenship, this effort took courage. Initially, people resisted. The superintendent was defensive. There were turf battles. Egos were hurt. But when they got together and owned the challenge and agreed to keep meeting and moving, progress was made. And they amplified the small steps they were making, and that built trust and hope. They drew more people in, and hope became contagious. I think these lessons exemplify, in my mind, what I think courageous citizenship is all about. And just the last thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it back to you, is that you can read and listen to this story from about 10 people from Reading talking about it, including the superintendent, who was initially very defensive and really made a wonderful turnaround. You can find this story at schoolconversations.org/Reading. I'll put that in the chat. There's also a study guide that you can download if you'd like to have people listen to it and then talk about the lessons that they take away from that story. Maury, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Ian, thank you so much. And I love because we've heard a story now is involving other organizations and people. And that's an important thing about the Brave Angels story is that while we have alliances and members, as you decide what you're going to do, we have Brave Angels tools that you can deploy, but there's going to be many other things. There's other organizations and Rotary and people, civic groups, depending upon what you want to do and decide to do, you engage. So Ken, thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for the stories that you're sharing through your podcast and for carrying forward to be able to drive this change and make a difference.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, we want each of you to weigh in now. So now's the time when if you're multitasking, it's time to come back and single task here because in the chat thread, Paige is going to add a link. And the link is the link that allows you to be able to join into our Braver Angels Civic Exchange powered by Converge. What you'll do is click on that link right now, and it's going to open up another thing on your browser. But these days, we're all used to that. So all you need to do is you'll put your name and your email in, and then it'll take you into the Braver Angels Civic Exchange. We're going to use this to get a couple of ideas and feedback from you. So if you'll look at the chat right now, click on that if you'd like to participate to share some of your ideas, and click to join the session. And as you do that, you'll come into a question, and I'm going to change your screen on that right now. And I can see a bunch of you coming in already. Others of you, just click on it. It'll take you right where you're going to be, right where we are. And I'll share my screen to show you if you're still looking to log in. You're going to come after you've selected join the session. You'll come and you'll see this first question, this one question that we'd love to have each of you brainstorm on. It's what patterns in these stories resonate with you and your experiences in this work. Think of times when you have been changed for the better as a result of doing this work, and enter as many ideas as you can. And this allows us to get feedback from all 115 or so of you. And I'll be quiet and give a quiet minute here as we get some of these ideas coming in. And then I'm going to bring in a good friend of mine from here in Utah, Stacy Proctor, here in about a minute. It's great. Can see the ideas coming. Bunch coming in. As you type it, new ideas will come in. This is really helpful because we're going to see the things that are resonating with you and get from your stories. Now let me have, as you're typing those, and feel free to continue to do that as you get inspired, because I know you're about to be inspired. I know the emotions are about to hit because I'm going to have Stacy Proctor join us here. Stacy is from Utah. And Stacy and we met each other a few years ago, and then and I think we actually saw each other at Kenosha at the convention. Mm-hmm. And Stacy, there's a song that might touch on this, changed for the better. Two people, very different backgrounds, coming together across difference with curiosity and passion. Can you make that come to life for us?
Absolutely, Maury. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I am inspired by so many of you. So here's a little song. come into our lives for a reason. Bring something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow if we let them, and we help them in return. Well, I don't know if I believe that's true, but I know I'm who I am today because I knew you. Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, I have been changed for good. It well may be that we will never meet again in this lifetime. So let me say before we part, so much of me is made of what I've learned from you. You'll be with me like a handprint on my heart. And now whatever way our stories end, I know you have rewritten mine by being my friend. Like a ship blown from its mooring by a wind off the sea, like a seed dropped by a skybird in a distant wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good. And just to clear the air, I ask forgiveness for the things I've done you've blamed me for. But then I guess we know there's blame to share, and none of it seems to matter anymore. Like a ship blown from its mooring by a wind off the sea, like a seed dropped by a bird in the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? I do believe I have been changed for the better. And because I knew you, because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good.
Stacy, thank you so much. If you're not familiar with the musical Wicked by now, or the movie or anything else, that's where that comes from. But Stacy, before you go, bringing that spirit in here, and I want to ask all the folks here too, by the way, if you were inspired and you want to share a quick story, raise your hand. We're going to do that in just a second. But Stacy, for you, when you think of the words of that song, and we were talking beforehand, and I'm like, okay, I got to try to keep the emotions in check here. But when we do this work at Braver Angels of Courageous Citizenship, why does that song fit so perfectly with For Good?
Thank you for asking. I believe in the miracle that all of us are right here, right now, at this time in history in the world for a reason, and that our paths don't cross by happenstance. And I also believe the best and the highest growth that each of us can come to individually is when we're impacted by people who think differently than us. And it really is an opportunity of the heart just to grow and open ourselves up to that change. It's extremely vulnerable. But at the end of the day, I think each of us can look at ourselves and see how we've expanded in our compassion, our wisdom, our perspective, and become more whole and better people because of those who not only share our perspectives, but who have very different perspectives and life stories. So I'm grateful for that song and grateful for the chance to share it with you tonight.
Thank you. And I know I have been changed for the better as a result of being with each of you. And that song was perfect. And thank you for bringing that spirit of that here on this Sunday evening into this fireside chat of that song is the essence of what we're all about. Now, I do want to ask if there's anyone who has a story, big or small, where you've experienced change for the better as a result of doing this work that is at its core, this courageous citizenship. Go ahead and raise your hand. I am going to ask a new friend of mine. I'm going to put him on the spot, Jeff Tiemann. I saw you, Jeff, so I'm going to ask Jeff in just a second to share his story. But let's start with Beth. Beth, if you'll go ahead and share a story, and then we'll go to, and then Beth Mallow, and then we'll go
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
go ahead, Beth.
I love, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
I love that song. My husband and I actually sang it recently at something in New Hampshire, but um, it actually reminds me of a friendship I had with not a braver angel, but I used braver angel skills. Was a Christian conservative. We sang together in a quartet in when I was in Tennessee, and we were diametrically opposed on so many different issues, right? My being Jewish, her being Christian conservative, and yet we learned to on our journeys to our competitions, we learned to listen to each other, right? And I learned things about abortion from her perspective and
By
other
having the
issues of
conversation.
immigration, and it was fabulous. And she learned from me, and it was music. So I just wanted to share that.
I love that. And I'm going to put in the chat, there's an email that we'd love you after the session tonight to share these stories at braverangels.org. But Jeff, from Minnesota, Jeff Tiemann, if you wouldn't mind sharing just from your perspective, what's a story where you've seen courageous citizenship come to life?
Well, I'm going to share a personal story and it really hit me because of the lyrics of change for good. And I've been involved in Brave Angels for about 6 years, and I was having a conversation with my family over Thanksgiving and talking about the goals of courageous citizenship and being active in this and listening well. And I was talking about the lap skills, and then one of my family members, they said, "Dad, you do that all the time." And I took that as a compliment, and what I realized is that the what I have learned and taught and led other people through has changed me. And just locally, we have been able to get now two groups of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, the state party leads, and they have both changed over, and now we've recruited the newest ones. And what's so interesting is that I am seeing a change in the political rhetoric from the state chair, and what they have said is that we are opponents, we're not enemies when we got them together on a stage together.
I
So
love
what,
that.
and that takes a lot of courage today. It
It
takes a
does.
lot of courage for political leaders to come across the aisle and do that. And because they did that, we were then able to get county heads of both parties together too. So I love the ripple effect, and so I love this idea of courageous citizenship, and then lifting it up and honoring it in a way that it has that ripple
It's so
effect.
great. I love that. And thank you, Jeff. I know I put you on the spot there, but I know the stories you've shared with me, and I appreciate that. Now, we want to get your feedback. We want to get your feedback through for all of you. So if you'll go back to the Civic Exchange that you had before, just refresh your browser and it'll take you to a new question that I've brought you to. And this is now when you help us understand, now that you've heard us talk about courageous citizenship, and we've given some stories and examples through, I want to say this one phrase that's been part of my life, and I believe it's what we're hearing tonight is through small and simple things, great things are brought to pass. And this idea of some very big, some very small and simple conversations. But in your words, if you go back to the Civic Exchange, and again, Paige can put the link in there again if you don't have it, just refresh your browser. It should be right there where you're at. And here's the question: what does courageous citizenship mean to you? Imagine you were describing it to someone else and had to put it in a text message. So talk, let's spend a couple of minutes on this. And we've got an exciting announcement we're about to make, but we want to get your feedback on this idea. So I'll be quiet, give you a minute or so. Type in as many ideas as you want to think of as to what does this idea of courageous citizenship mean to you? And as you type it in, you'll see others coming in. And Stacy, I'm still hearing the song in my head, so thank you. Love it. We've got about 30 more seconds. And again, hope you can see that with this tool, it allows us to talk to all of you at the same time. It would be impossible for us to get each of your stories. So sometimes we'll bring this in and we'll use it like this in a respectful way to get your feedback. And we're very grateful to Doug and Sam Griffin and their team at Converge, who through all of this fall of 2025 have been allowing us to leverage this platform free of charge. And we really appreciate that donation on their behalf. Final 30 seconds. Anything else that you think of that is what courageous citizenship means to you? Okay, love that. Last call on this. Last call on this question. And for any of you who are not able to get on or just have not answered, this is what we're seeing here, right? We've got about 95 ideas in a couple of minutes here on this. And so this is how we use the Braver Angels Civic Exchange. Now, I want to ask you a second question. So I'm going to change your screen in about 5 seconds. So make sure and go ahead and hit add idea, or if you have something in your box there. And the next question, because I want to make sure we get everybody's ideas that you had in that box. And we'll be able to use these and share these back. Now, what I want to ask you now is, I'm going to change your screen in 3, 2, 1. Now let's do rapid brainstorming one more time. What does this look like? Now I saw some of your answers actually had behaviors, but let's be very specific on behaviors. What does it look like to practice courageous citizenship? Be specific about the behaviors, the actions, the activities that you would expect that represent this idea. What are they? And again, just keeping this up on the screen for those of you who may not be weighing in, you can kind of see what's coming in here on the screen live on the Zoom call. The behaviors that we associate with courageous citizenship. It's very helpful to get this from you, and I know that hopefully you're in your alliances having these conversations now sometime in the next couple of months so that you can continue to give us this feedback. Let's go 30 more seconds for any other behaviors. Great. And what's inspiring to me on this is seeing some of these things come up that are, ideas that move forward and that you'll just be inspired to do your own thing. We'll have Brave Angels programming that helps with skills, but this is owning it. This is taking it and moving it forward. So final call on anything else. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to do something kind of fun with this. I'm going to change your screen now in about 3 seconds. And now I want you to just spend little less than a minute on putting a like button. I know we're familiar with the like button, so ready, here goes, boom. Scroll through these ideas. There's over 100, or right about 199, and just look up and down and say, I know that you're going to like all of these, but what are the ones that you really like the most, that really stand out and feel like, yeah, that's the kind of thing that I really see. You could put a like on everything, but just scroll through the ones that really, really stand out to you the most. And again, this is kind of fun for those of you who are not weighing in. Let's just give you an idea what this looks like. I've got it set to sorting. And so you can see the votes as they're coming in of just what people are really resonating with. I'll be quiet for the last 30 seconds here, or last, 15, 20. Okay, final 10 seconds. Any others that stand out the most? These are the behaviors that allow us to follow through with that song of action and change for the better and for good, and owning it and being a part of that process. And in that spirit, the last thing I'm going to keep open on the screen here, and then we're going to go to a very exciting announcement. You might have heard me say a few things about it. Maury, stop talking about it. We got to get to the announcement. I know it's almost here. I'm super excited. But I'm going to change your screen and have this open. This one, you're just going to have a personal statement here. You won't see everyone's until you've written yours. So I'm going to change your screen in 3, 2, 1. Now, here's the question. Consider courageous citizenship and how you see it in your life, given what we've discussed today or tonight. And answer this one question. What's one idea of something you can do over the next few months in your life to show courageous citizenship the Braver Angels way? Think of one thing that you can commit to doing to make this real in your own life. Now, I'll circle these back to y'all if you want, but this is capturing it. I want you to really think about this for a second, put it in, and then I'm going to go to Mark Metzger for a pretty cool announcement. Okay, let's bring Mark on the screen. I know you're still going to get your idea there. You might be thinking about it. Mark Metzger, great friend of mine, and also among the many hats around Braver Arts and music and everything else is our convention. Let me hand it to you to do a very exciting announcement tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Maury. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be with all of you tonight. So one of the defining aspects of our work at Braver Angels is our national conventions. Since 2018, we've held conventions in Harrisonburg, St. Louis, Gettysburg, and Kenosha that have brought together our members, volunteers, and leaders from all across the world for 3 days of programs, workshops, gatherings, and democratic action that build trust across political differences, inspire courageous citizenship, and renew our civic culture. Last year, our 2024 National Convention brought together over 750 delegates to Kenosha, Wisconsin, where we had the largest red-blue viewing of the consequential Biden-Trump debate and voted for immigration to be our next national issue that Braver Angels would address. Next year, Braver Angels will be hitting its 10th anniversary as an organization as our nation hits its 250th. And we'll be bringing our convention back to where our nation began. 250 years ago, our founding fathers met in Philadelphia to start a new nation with a Declaration of Independence. And in that declaration, they mutually pledged to each other their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. Next year, we will reconvene on this hallowed ground to renew that very pledge. 1776 to 2026, a pledge renewed. From June 25th to the 28th, we will meet at Temple University in downtown Philadelphia for our 2026 National Convention. Abe, can you go ahead and share the video?
One of the most amazing things that we've done at Braver Angels over the years is our national convention. 1,000 people from across the political spectrum, equal numbers of red, blue, and in between, practicing this concept of courageous citizenship, renewing civic culture, and building trust across political differences. Next year, we will hit our 10th year as an organization at Braver Angels. But as a country, we're hitting our 250th anniversary, celebrating the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So, I am excited and thrilled to let you know that we, Braver Angels, are bringing our convention to the place where this all began 250 years ago, and that's Philadelphia. June 25th to 28th, this is a chance for you to think, what difference do you want to make, first in your own life, then in your community, and then in this country, and inspiring other Americans to do the same. I invite you to choose to be a delegate at the 2026 Braver Angels National Convention in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Members, volunteers, leaders, those who are brand new to Braver Angels, we ask you to join us in Philadelphia for this momentous occasion next year. Starting in January, we will be launching our full convention website where you can learn more about our convention and submit your application to be a delegate. We hope you can join us. And please share this video announcement on social media and however you can, because we want America to know what we will be doing together. Thank you, Maury, for having me on. I'm going to pass it back to you.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm just going to assume that since we have everyone's mics muted, that you were all cheering as loudly as I was with my mic muted, going to Philadelphia next year. And Mark, thank you for the effort to be able to pull this together and work with Temple University and pulling and getting all these ideas, all the work that was required to get there. Now, if because we have you here and because you just heard we're going to Philadelphia, I'm going to change your screen to one last point of feedback. So if you haven't already hit submit on the idea that you're putting in on your one commitment, please do now, because in 3, 2, 1, I'm changing your screen. Let's do 2 minutes of brainstorming. What would you look forward to the most that we could do at the convention in Philadelphia right before the 4th of July and everything that's going to be happening on 250 years? Let's rapid brainstorm for just 2 minutes. What would you imagine that would really get you excited to be at Philadelphia? Brainstorm here, anything that you can think of. And by the way, we just received a very substantial donation for scholarships to be able to help those in need to get there. And that we've already got that committed and others on the way. Love these ideas, and I'm going to keep this open as we wrap up our meeting here. Any ideas that come through the rest of the time that we're finishing, you can feel free to add those together. Thank you for joining in on the feedback as well as listening as we got forward. As I close, I want to remind and give you a couple of things that you can move forward with this. Our hope tonight was to go a little bit deeper on the idea of courageous citizenship so that you can see yourself in it. You can feel inspired and have specific ideas of things that you can do to be able to make a difference locally, in your own life first, then locally, and then across the country. I want to remind you of where we started in talking about the dimensions of courageous citizenship that matter. Internally, this is the necessary personal preparation. To change our country's culture in this area, we will have to be able to touch individual people, to empower them, to be able to set aside assumptions, look inward, reject that cynicism so that they embrace that agency and their role in the process. We have methods for constructive engagement. We'll bring in others outside of Braver Angels. We have ours. But we need to be able to help people do this type of action grounded in dignity and shared humanity and guided by respectful listening and curiosity. And the civic dimension of this idea of courageous citizenship is where we talk about collaborative action and renewal, moving beyond talk only. Now, some of you may not be doing this right now, and you may choose not to do something more involved, like a big citizen-led solutions. That's okay. It's your choice of what you need to do to be able to engage. But the civic dimension of courageous citizenship is meeting the moment need today to work side by side locally on shared interests and values, not waiting for elected officials to have to solve that, but like Mary and her partner out and team out there in Irvine, opening the way for the elected officials to deal with their work and providing them the support to get there, to transform division into unity of purpose. That's what we mean by courageous citizenship. And we're going to equip you with more information of how we talk about this, because we know that the word citizenship and the word courageous and the way people could define it, this could go off in different ways and people could take different to mean different things. We know what it means internally, but through marketing and messaging, we will help define the essence of what we're talking about. But let me close with a few ideas that you can leverage right now, and we'll distribute these so you can use them. Imagine saying this to a friend or to a family member. You're tired of the political chaos? Courageous citizenship is choosing to be the leader who connects with neighbors and builds what our community needs. Or what about this? Be the one to step up across the divide. Courageous citizenship is using curiosity, not contempt, to honor every American and get things done together. Or finally, this one. Stop the fight, start the fix. Courageous citizenship is the brave, hopeful way to reclaim your power and build a better America with people you disagree with. Each of these things are specific ways that this comes to life, that you can talk and engage with others to invite them. We know why we're involved in this. I know and am honored and humbled by all of you who are here tonight, committing an hour and a half on a Sunday evening to be able to discuss this idea. I hope with all of my heart that you will feel the gratitude that I feel and that all of the individuals that put this together tonight feel for the work that you're doing, for choosing to be a part of this. We know that right now we have to do more than a mist of water on a raging forest fire. We have to be able to grow and we have to be able to reach other people, because we envision an America where courageous citizenship is the honored norm. We will be the partners to get there by reaching out, connecting with others, and carrying this message forward one by one in our communities, our families, and most importantly, in our own hearts. Thank you for being here tonight. As Mark mentioned, you're going to receive, and you'll see it multiple ways, this particular announcement that you have. You'll see in the thread that there's a link that you have, and we would love for you to be able to take that video, and we're going to send out a version of it that works on social media, and we want to flood the internet with this announcement and get as many people to be recognized that yes, people are doing this. We are doing this, and we're doing it together. And finally, as Paige put there again, there's an email address for stories@braverangels.org. If you think about something that happens in your life that represents this behavior, send it to us. We want to hear it and we want to share it. Have a great night. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Give somebody a hug tonight that needs a hug. And then give yourself a hug to move forward as you start the week tomorrow. Thank you so much, and all the best to each of you. Happy holiday season.